Will Maryland start 5-0?
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you for making us part of your day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. It's officially game week. We play the Towson Tigers on Saturday. We have a game to talk about. And I can't wait to get to the game. It's going to be awesome. It's at home, our first home game of the season. Going to get a chance to see how many fans show up, what the team looks like, the first look. Obviously, we're playing Towson, so we're supposed to win by a lot of points. But it is a game nonetheless on the Big Ten Network. So hopefully if you're not there, you tune in on TV. It should be a really good game where we get off to a 1-0 start. But I want to talk about, will Maryland start 5-0 in this season? And if you look at the first 5 games, they're all very manageable in terms of games that we should win, and we play teams that we are better than on paper, and we have 4 home games in that stretch and 1 away game against Michigan State. Michigan State's a really good team, obviously, but I want to walk game by game and see if we should go 5-0 and what it means and the different challenges. But I'm going to go ahead and say that we will go 5-0 to start the year. First week against Towson this weekend, Saturday, 3:30 at home in the Shell. Expecting a huge win for the Terps. Should be able to put up a ton of points on offense, should be able to not allow a lot on defense, should be able to start getting the offensive line rotation. It'll be interesting to see what group they roll out first this weekend, but different question marks on the team should start to get figured out by Towson. It's not going to be a real test. Nobody should be tired out. It shouldn't be too much of a physical game because it should be such a heavy rotation of players coming in and out. We should be playing young guys. We should be playing veterans. We should just playing a bunch of combination of guys, especially getting into the third, fourth quarter when we're supposed to be up. I projected the score to be like 63-3 or something like that. Other people are saying like 58-6. I think it won't be close. Towson isn't in the same league as us in terms of talent, so it shouldn't be close against Towson this weekend. We're going to continue to talk about them on the show in the coming days, including a preview of Towson. But that's what I would say about this weekend's game against Towson. It shouldn't be close for any reason. And then next, game 2, Charlotte comes to us better than Towson. They are better than Towson. A solid program. I'll give them that. But I still think we should win. September 9th, 7:30 at night. Like I said, at home, and we're going to be big favorites again. We played this Charlotte team last year. I want to say it was like 56-21. We're able to score a lot of points. I want to see our defense play a little bit better than against Charlotte. But the big thing about playing non-Big Ten teams or non-Power 5 teams in the first 2 games is that we can figure out some of the offensive line stuff if it's not figured out yet. So I'm hoping by the time the Charlotte game is over, we have the offensive line down. We have our best 5 out. If they haven't figured it out yet, I'm hoping they're closer. I'm interested to see what group they roll out first. We think we have an idea of what it's going to be, but we don't really know until the actual game. So by the end of the Charlotte game, all those kinks and on the offensive line, but the whole team better be figured out because the next week we're headed into the Virginia game. Blackout. Fans should show up. Should be a solid game. Virginia, they're a good program. Power 5, ACC. We used to play them every year when we were in the ACC. But Virginia definitely isn't as good as us this year. I think we have more talent. I think we're overall just a better team. If you look at the rankings, we have just a better ranking than Virginia. But I expect that to be the biggest game of the first three. I expect the fans to show up. I expect the students to show up in the blackout game with the new black helmets, the black jerseys. I expect everyone to be there. It should be a huge game. I'm not going to say it's going to be sold out, but I'm expecting there not to be a ton of seats open. But it's our first real test. I'm not going to say we can't drop it. We can definitely drop that game against Virginia. But being home and just being the overall better team, I have more confidence in us beating Virginia because of those things. But we can definitely drop it. I'm not going to call it a swing game quite yet, but I'm going to say that if we don't play as well as we want to, then we can drop it. And that's why I think it's so important that we have the kinks along the offensive line figured out by the Virginia game, because they're a good team, and we'll get into Virginia a ton, but they have a new quarterback coming from a smaller school. I want to say a Monmouth transfer. You got to check me on that. I saw an article about it, but Virginia should be a really good game. It has the potential to be close. I'm sure they have guys, and I've talked about Virginia as one of the most important games on our schedule because we compete with them for recruits every year. So I think it is one of the most important games to establish ourselves as a better program than Virginia. But in terms of the first three games, we should win the first two handily. It shouldn't be close. We should win the Virginia game, I think, pretty handily. I don't think it should be necessarily close. That's what I'm kind of saying. If we get upset by a Charlotte or a Virginia, then just the whole overall outlook of the season, the way people look at our program, just the fans, all the people in the media are going to be disappointed with how the talks of the season are going. But what will happen in the next two games? I'll tell you after this message from BetterHelp. This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices, and the path forward isn't always clear. Whether you're dealing with decisions around career, relationships, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life, so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime. No additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege. After the UVA game, it gets tricky fast. But of course, I said we're going to go 5-0, so I think we're going to win the next two games. But the fourth game especially, I think it's the most tricky game in terms of the first five, and it's away at Michigan State at 3:30. Michigan State has a new QB. They lost some talent in the transfer portal. If you keep up with that stuff, I think they lost one of their best wide receivers, but they've lost some guys in the transfer portal. People are thinking this Michigan State team won't be as good as they were in the past. They've had some good teams in the past couple of years, but people are saying they won't be as good. But their coach, Coach Tucker, had something interesting to say. He said it's his most talented team yet, which contradicts what a lot of people think. But whether it's his most talented team or not most talented team, Michigan State always has talent. So we know they're going to bring a really good overall team, a really good overall program, a tough program. I expect them to run the ball a lot. I expect them to test our offensive line, get after those guys. But I'm hoping by the Michigan State game, I talk about this a lot, but I'm hoping we have everything figured out in terms of the offensive line. There might be new injuries, but we're just going into this saying there's no injuries yet because we just don't know the storylines of what's going to happen. But it's our first Big Ten game, and Michigan State is such a stellar program, like I said. First Big Ten game against a program like that, you have to call it a swing game because anything can happen. But I think we win it. I think we travel to Michigan State and win it. I think we've taken that next step as a program where we can win a swing game away against a Michigan State. We beat them last year, of course, but that was at home, and that was in different circumstances. I think they honestly might have had a better team last year than they did this year, but we'll see as we get into it. We'll see what their record is like. But I'm saying we beat them to go to 4-0, and then we travel to Indiana. Indiana's a trap game. It's a trap game. We cannot drop this one. I'm pretty sure the Indiana game is at home. They got a good team. It's a Big Ten quality team. It's a Big Ten opponent, but they're not great. They're no Ohio State. They're no Penn State. They're no Michigan. I wouldn't even say they're Illinois. They're a solid team. I think they're projected to get like 6 wins or something like that. But it's absolutely a trap game. If we're 4-0 headed into the Indiana game and we just had a huge win against Michigan State, let's say we won by 10 points or 7 points, it was a dogfight, barely came up on top, and we're headed over back home to Indiana with our eyes on Ohio State in 2 weeks, then that's a trap game to me. Because Indiana, like I said, they're a good but not great team, but we still have to play well enough to beat them. They're a Big Ten team. It helps towards the Big Ten record. We need that if we want to finish relatively close to the top of the Big Ten. Coach Loxley is talking about us winning the Big Ten, and the players are talking about that. The recruits are talking about that. But are we really there? We can't drop a game like Indiana. We can't drop a game like Michigan State. We can't drop any game in the start of the first 5 season. I almost could argue that we will go 5-0. I'm going to say that, but we have to go 5-0. If that vision of the program doesn't want to change, if we really want to think of ourselves as taking that next step on that slope, starting 4-1 just isn't quite good enough, in my opinion, for this program. In terms of the first 5 games, I just think the vision of the program, people are really thinking us as right behind the Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. People are thinking that we're the 4th best team in the Big Ten East. And so if we're that, I think it's extremely important that we start 5-0, especially for momentum going into Ohio State, because if we beat Indiana, we're 5-0 headed into the Ohio State game. What does that mean? We're going to be ranked. We're going to get a ton of media hype. Probably College Football Game Day will probably touch on Ohio State, Maryland. There'll be a lot of stuff going on. I think it's so important because I'm an athlete. I play a Division I sport. If you're not undefeated going into a game, or if you feel like you don't have a chance to make the Big Ten championship now, or you can't make a championship now because, let's say I'm playing in a tournament and we lose a game and now we're pretty much playing consolation. Obviously, it's not to that extreme. They're still playing meaningful games to make it to a bowl game, but not to the Big Ten championship. But that momentum and confidence and just hype of the game and the feeling of wanting to win is just a little bit higher when you go into that game 5-0 compared to 4-1, because if you beat Ohio State now, people are going to be talking about you. I mean, people are going to talk about you with one loss if you beat them, but people are going to talk about you as a different way. You're going to get a different kind of hype. You're just going to get a different everything coming from the media, coming from inside the locker room. You're gonna hit harder, you're gonna practice harder, just with that chance and that confidence that you really think you have a chance to win the Big Ten East. With Penn State and Michigan coming up later on, you give yourself a real chance to beat them. So I don't think we'll drop a game against Charlotte. We certainly shouldn't drop a game against Towson or Charlotte. I don't think we dropped the Virginia game, but I think there's a possibility we drop the Virginia game. So I think the Virginia, Indiana, and Michigan State game, that 3-game stretch, is an underrated, really important stretch for us, because we just can't drop one of those games if we want to go into the next season or go into the Ohio State game with confidence. And if you look at the Ohio State schedule, Will they be undefeated? I don't even know. They play Notre Dame 2 weeks before us. I actually made a mistake of talking about how they play Notre Dame a week before us. That's actually not true. I was looking into it, and they actually play Notre Dame, but then they have a bye week going into our game. So I thought maybe they were going to be beat up from Notre Dame game. But they'll probably, since they have the bye, that's probably a good place to have a bye. Maybe you could argue maybe they would want it before Ohio or before Penn State. But Ohio State plays Notre Dame 2 weeks before us. Like I said, I'm not guessing they'll be beat up, but they might not be undefeated. They could lose to that Notre Dame team. I watched that Notre Dame team play this weekend. That team is a good football team. Really good left tackle. Sam Hartman, really good. Freshman wide receiver, really good player. Good defense. Obviously, it was against Navy. I want to see more heading into the Notre Dame-Ohio State game, but they might not be undefeated. So we have a chance to be 5-0 going into the Ohio State game, and Ohio State might be 3-1. So it could be interesting if we're 5-0 and they're 3-1, because that would be a must-have game if they want any chance of making the college football playoff. But both teams will be ranked. It'll be a clash. Fans from Maryland will be super excited. And I'm not picking us to beat Ohio State. In our prediction video, I didn't pick us to beat Ohio State. But just the amount of hype that it'll bring to the Maryland program for recruiting, for everything, I think is extremely important. And then I also want to talk about Penn State. Penn State, in their first 5 games, they play Iowa and Illinois. Illinois has a really good team. They're receiving votes in the top 25. Iowa, I'm pretty sure, is in the top 25. I want to say they're 20th. They're somewhere around the 20th. So could Penn State drop one in their first 5 games? So my point is here, I'm getting at, could we be near the top of the Big Ten starting 5-0 with an early start? Eventually, you guys talk about actually winning it. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But could Penn State drop one to Illinois and be 4-1 or whatever in their first 5 games while we're sitting at 5-0? Top of the Big Ten, maybe along with Michigan, who has an early first 5 games. No reason they should drop one. But could we be at the top? I don't know. I think it's a possibility. I'm not saying it'll happen. But if that happens, then you really can start to see the vision. If Penn State drops one, then if you beat Ohio State and Penn State has already dropped another Big Ten game, then it's looking a lot more promising to win the Big Ten. That means other teams are beating each other up. And that's what I talked about when I said, can Maryland win the Big Ten? I was saying someone's going to have to get upset between the Big Three, and they're also going to have to beat each other up. Like when I say that, I mean Penn State has to beat Michigan, Ohio State has to beat Penn State, and like it has to be a 3-way thing, if you know what I mean. So in terms of that, in terms of us winning the Big Ten, I think something like that has to happen, because I doubt we're not going to beat all 3 of them. That's just not realistic. So other teams are going to have to beat them up. We're not going to be able to drop one of our first 5 games, and that's why I talked about the Virginia, Indiana, Michigan State stretch is extremely important in terms of we can't drop any of those first 5 games. But how are the NFL Terps doing? NFL cuts were this weekend. We'll talk about it after this ad from FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and it can be everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. College football season is here, and this season, Locked On is kicking up your coverage. Each Friday, Locked On will go live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. Locked On College Football Live will cover the college football playoff implications, the conference rivalry game, and go in depth like only Locked On can, including insight analysis from our stable Locked On College hosts covering their team every day. Find Locked On College Football Live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it. Maryland Terps showed out in their last preseason game, but was it enough? So we got bad news for Dontay Demus. He got cut. Fans were wanting Demus to make the roster. Honestly, I didn't think he would because the wide receiver depth on the Ravens is insane. They got 6 guys, 7, they got a ton of guys in that room, especially with drafting Zay Flowers and getting Odell Beckham. Their wide receiver room is so loaded right now. It's deep. But the thing was, I thought maybe he had a chance to get that 6th spot because of what he did in his final preseason game. Led the Ravens in receiving yards and had 2 catches for 86 yards. But it ultimately wasn't enough. If you saw the catches, though, gosh, they were such a Dontay Demus type of play. Go up and get it over defenders. He looked good. So on the bright side, it could open up another opportunity. That's kind of how the NFL works. If you saw it, the Cowboys talked about it when they traded for Trey Lance or whatever. They told their third-string quarterback, Sam Greer, that he was going to get cut, but we're going to give you this game to audition himself. And he went for like 300 yards and probably put himself in position to get signed by another team. So I think a similar thing kind of happened with Dontay Demus. He led the Ravens in receiving yards that game, but he didn't get a whole lot of touches the rest of the games. I wish he got more in the other games. But having 86 yards on 2 catches and shows some flashes is really promising. He'll get another shot. I know it. I think he'll be on a practice squad for somebody, but he'll get another shot. Just give him time. I'm sure he will. Probably this season. I have confidence in that. But Rakim Jarrett. So we got through some bad news with Dontay Demus, but there's some good news with Rakim Jarrett. Rakim Jarrett had a very good preseason, finished with 7 receptions for 132 yards, had 4 catches for 48 yards against the Ravens. And a quote from CBS I want to read, Jarrett was also able to consistently impress during training camp practices. So he remains very much in play for a number 6 receiver role ahead of final roster cuts Tuesday. And it looks like they've cut some of their other wide receivers. So it looks like Rakim Jarrett is going to make the 53-man roster, which I'm super excited for Rakim because I know he's worked hard. I remember when he flipped from LSU to Maryland and he was considered like a high 4-star, 5-star guy. And a lot of people were surprised. But I'm glad that it kind of paid off in a way. And now that he's going to be on the Bucs 53-man roster. And then I also think it's an amazing opportunity because they have 2 really good wide receivers that he can learn from. And Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, I think Chris Godwin is really similar to Rakim Jarrett in terms of play styles, similar body types. I think similar just play styles overall. So I think he gets to learn from one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in Chris Godwin and learn what he does, and also Mike Evans. So I think it's an awesome opportunity for Rakim. I hope he takes advantage of it. I know he will. I hope he sees the field some. I'll keep you guys in the loop on what Rakim does this coming year for the Bucs. But Jacob Copeland also survived the first round of cuts. So we'll see what happens with that. And then it looks like Spencer Anderson, the offensive lineman from Maryland, looks like he will make the Steelers roster. The Steelers just traded another offensive lineman away. So that was a pretty good tell that he'll make it. But it looks like he will, in fact, make the roster. And people have talked about his versatility along the offensive line. which is something that Coach Locksley preaches, versatility on their offensive linemen, which I think really helps in the NFL because in terms of injury, you don't know where, you don't know when. Offensive lines in the NFL are often injured all over the place. So when you can play different positions, it really helps make the team if you have that flexibility. But pretty good news for the NFL Terps. I hope Dontay Demus finds a new place, a practice squad, hopefully to prove himself again and maybe get a chance later on in the season when maybe some injuries are going down. But congrats to Rakim, and hopefully Copeland also makes it. I'm just unsure about him. But I did want to touch on Deonte Banks. Deonte Banks had a really good preseason. He struggled in training camp, people were talking about, but he's in line to start. Everything's going well for Deonte Banks. So congrats to Deonte Banks, too. We knew he was going to make the roster as a first-round pick, but he played really well. He's going to be starting outside. Can't wait to see what he does. But that's all we have today. Please like and subscribe. It's game week officially. And thanks for listening to Locked On Terps.